Good evening, good evening. So thankful that we're all able to be here this evening. I'm thankful that I'm also able to be here as well. This evening I want to kind of really put a capstone on what we've been talking about these last several weeks about the idea of hypocrisy. We had begun this study of hypocrisy when we were looking at the true source of defilement, which is the human heart, which is each and every one of us and the sinful desires that begin to boil up to the surface from within each and every one of our own wills, ambitions, and desires. We had looked at that through Matthew chapter 15, and we had really discussed for several weeks about this idea of hypocrisy. And then even in our Mother's Day sermon, as to say, we talked about how we have to have that pure faith, that true and genuine faith, because without which your own children and those who are around you are going to see the actual roots of your faith and be completely off-put by the church because they see the hypocrisy better than anybody else. So now here this evening, I want to put a capstone on it all, to be able to actually point out and show us the religion that God recognizes. Now, religion, this term here, has kind of gotten a bad rap in our society today, and it has applied to it many differing definitions surrounding it, and because of that, people have begun to reject the idea of religion. They say, no, it is not about religion, it is about relationship. And then they'll say, no religion, only relationship with God. And I would say, no. Just plain and simple, that is not the case, because James himself says that religion is an essential part to us being pleasing to God. Okay? So, yes, we need relationship with God, but we also need religion, because it is in religion that our faith in Christ is demonstrated through our obedience to His Word. And without that, we are with nothing. So we have to remain true to what God actually defines religion is. It is not just about relationship, brothers and sisters. It is not just about this good feeling or affinity that we have with God. No, we also need right practices. We need right worship. We need right doctrine. We need all of these things to actually be pleasing to God. We would read there, would we not, in Hebrews chapter 12 and verses 27 and 28, that we are to offer and render to God acceptable worship. And by that fact that it says acceptable worship, it means that there therefore is unacceptable worship. So then we have to have religion. We have to have these doctrines and these standards and these precepts that allow us to be able to come into that relationship with God properly. Okay? You cannot have a relationship with God without religion. No, religion is that gateway into a relationship with God. We need both. Now, there are some who would say that it's all about religion, to where they get into more of the ecclesiastical standards of things, and they say that it is all external ordinances. Now, that is wrong as well. But we are to worship God, as we would read there in John chapter 4, and in verse 24, we are to worship God in spirit and in truth. In relationship, if we will, and in religion. That both of these two things are working together synonymously for us to actually have a right standing with God. So, now that we've kind of discussed that right there, I want us to look now in the book of James. If you'll open there to that epistle, James chapter 1 and verses 26 and 27, he outlines for us the religion that God recognizes. Now, again, let us read here. I'm reading out of the ESV, and it says this: if anybody thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. The very fact that it says that there is an idea of pure religion and worthless religion, that there's a religion that God recognizes and there's a religion that God rejects, it also then teaches us this truth that God is not just on a celestial mountain up above, of which then all the peoples of the earth take differing paths up to him. No, it tells us that there's one path. It tells us that there is a way to be able to get to him and to get to him rightly. That there is not this plethora of differing avenues of which then we can be acceptable to God. No, there is religion that is accepted and there's religion that is unaccepted. We're very quick to point out the differing religions out in the world today, whether they're paganistic or self-centered in their origins, and to say, of course those are religions that God would not accept. But we are not so quick to point out, likewise, that there's a religion even within Christianity that God does not accept. And that is the hypocrisy in Christianity. God will never accept that form of religion. So we're going to look at this, and I want us to see three key things from this text. So again, just starting in verse 26, it says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. To be able to have a religion that God recognizes, number one, we need a stewardship over our tongue. That there has to be a stewardship over our mouths. Jesus would be quick to teach us there in Matthew chapter 12 that for out of the outflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Jesus taught this again to us in our passages that we're familiar with in Matthew chapter 15 in verses 15 through 20 there, to where once again, that which comes from within the man or the heart of the man comes from the mouth. We have to be able to control our tongues. We have to be able to bridle our tongues. We cannot say that we are Christians and that we are religious, and yet we cannot control what comes out of our mouths. Now, when we talk about controlling the tongue, we need to understand that it means it in a twofold force here. Number one, of what we understand most readily, is controlling the tongue of not saying things that we should not say. That we need to be able to bridle it. That whenever, as Thumper taught us, if we have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all, right? We understand that precept taught to us by the theologian Bambi and so on and so forth. But not only that, but it is also saying the things that we should say. That is also part of controlling the tongue. Because to bridle the tongue is that idea of putting a bridle in a horse's mouth. This very image James would give to us not too much later in James chapter 3. That we have to bridle that tongue, which means that we need to control it. It is not just stopping a horse from doing what it should not do, but it is also directing the horse into doing that which it should do. So too is it with our tongues, that we have to stop it from doing that which it should not do, but we also have to direct it and guide it to do the things that it should do. Because sometimes it is so much easier to just remain silent. Sometimes, whenever we get into situations, when we're faced with those who do not hold to the same moral principles that we do, who do not hold to the same political values that we hold to because we are Christians, because they do not hold to the same doctrine that we do, sometimes it would be easier for us to just be quiet, to not say a word at all. But I would say to you, that is defiled religion. We have to speak, because to not speak is not controlling our tongue. That if we remain silent, then our tongue is in control of us. No, we have to be in control of it. We have to be bold, and we have to speak. We have to be as the apostles would be there in Acts chapter 4, where they're crying out, "For I cannot help but to speak to the things that I have seen and the things that I have heard." Brothers and sisters, we have seen and heard a great many wonders and miracles in God's holy word, and we need to speak about them. In fact, not only do we need to speak about them, we must speak about them to be right in the eyes of God. We can't just always just avoid saying bad words. We also have to say good words. We also can't just only avoid talking about the bad news. We have to then therefore give the good news. We have to do both. And that is this idea of bridling the tongue here. We need to have a complete and utter stewardship over our tongue. Because it says here in the text, notice it again, it says this, "If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue," what does he do? He deceives his heart. We could go about our lives sitting in the church pew very comfortably, other than the heat this evening, very comfortably sitting here, all the while our religion could be worthless. And you know what? There's nothing else in this world that infuriates me more than me putting time, effort, and energy into something, and it's worthless. It's not useful. I hate that beyond anything else. That's why I even have to be very careful about giving out handouts, because then if I see that very same day it's in the trash just 2 seconds later, right, it breaks my heart. Because I'm like, I put in all that time, effort, and energy into this one thing, and now it's just worthless. It was of no value there. But brothers and sisters, I might have spent 4 to 5 hours on that handout. How many hours have you spent serving God? How many hours have you spent sitting under the preaching, the teaching of God's inspired word? How many hours have you spent doing good works? How many years have you put yourself in service to God? How infuriating would it be for all that to be worthless? How heartbreaking would it be for all that to be worthless? So I think we need to do a ready check within our own hearts and our minds to ensure that when we are here and when we are participating in the service of God in religion, that it is something that God recognizes. Because again, the Apostle Paul, he would write to us there in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, talking about that if Christ was not raised, then we of all men are most to be pitied. But brothers and sisters, guess what? Christ has raised. Thanks be to God. But how much more pitiable would it be for us to go to hell with heaven on our minds? For us to go to hell while we're sitting in a church pew. While we have spent our lives dedicating ourselves to God, yet we end up like those who are described to us there in Matthew chapter 7 and verses 21 and following. To where there, on that day, many will say unto me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not do many and mighty works in your name? To which then I will turn to them and say, Depart from me, I never knew you, you workers of lawlessness. Your religion was worthless. Brothers and sisters, how can we have an acid test to the validity of our religion? How's your tongue? In saying the things that you should say and not saying the things that you should say likewise. Because again, that gives to us a complete autopsy of our hearts. It shows to us the truth of our hearts. Whenever nobody else is around you, whenever no Christians are surrounding you, how is your speech? Does it reflect that of the world or does it reflect that of the Word? How is your tongue actually operating? And even more so, not just the words that come out audibly, but also the words that we say in our minds. The words that we are constantly coming up with. The very reason why we have there in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, whenever it says, whenever you enter into the house of the Lord, quiet your hearts. Why? Because your heart's always speaking. What is your heart saying? Even as you are here, because nobody else is really vocalizing things here this evening, but nevertheless your heart's speaking. What is your heart saying? because that tells to us a good temperature of your spiritual relationship, your spiritual religion with God. We have to be stewards of the tongue. We have to put it under control. Now, this is not to say that we're going to be perfect in it. For we all stumble in many ways, as we read there in James chapter 3 and verses 1 through 2, and that we all stumble in the words that we say. But this is talking more so about what is the habitual speech of your mouth. From time to time, you're going to say things that you ought not say. You're going to be too harsh. You're going to slip up. You're going to deceive. You're going to lie. You're going to do these things from time to time. Because for he who says he has no sin is a liar and the truth is not in him. We all fall short in many ways, and we fall short in that which we say as well. But nevertheless, habitually, on a day-to-day basis, if you were to take a chart and to say, are the things that I'm saying bad? Are the things that I'm saying good? Or are the things that I'm saying indifferent? And if they're all indifferent, you're not controlling your tongue. If they're all bad, you're not controlling your tongue. We need the good. Why do you think the world is falling into such moral and ethical decay? Because Christians have remained silent. Christians, they might participate in religion, coming to church on Sundays, but then they're silent on Monday. No, we have to say something. We have to speak. We have to share the good news. We cannot remain silent anymore. Because just because we attend church on Sunday, if we're silent, therefore on Monday, your religion is worthless. There's no if, ands, or buts here. No, he says your religion is, in fact, worthless. That idea of worthless, it is the same idea that is given to us in the Psalms or in the Proverbs, where it says it is but vanity. It is that idea of chaff that is quickly blown away. It is of no lasting and eternal value here. And brothers and sisters, I want my religion to be of eternal value. For what else would we be doing here this evening, today? But not only that, notice it says if anybody thinks he is religious. This man, he thinks this. This person, they think that they're religious. This is talking about somebody who is self-deceived. And that is the worst deceiver of all, right? We talk about Satan, that he is pretty bad, right? Satan's pretty bad about being a deceiver. But also, one of the greatest deceivers for each and every one of us is ourselves. It is our own hearts. We read there in Jeremiah chapter 17 and in verse 9 that the heart is wicked, desperately wicked, and deceptive above all things. We would read there in Obadiah 3 that it says there that pride hath deceived you, to where it deceives us. It defiles us because of the pride that is within us. It is very dangerous when we are self-deceived. So thanks be to God that just in this very passage, the context of which, it tells to us how to not be deceived about our religion. If you look up a little bit into the context here, it talks about, verse 22, but be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anybody is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and then goes away at once and forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and preserves, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doings. How do we ensure that we're not being deceived? Yes, take a temperature of your words and that which you are saying, but also we have the book. We have the thing of which we can always apply ourselves to and to see if we're holding up to the standards of God. So number one, we see that we need, if we want religion that is recognized by God, then we need to have a stewardship of the tongue. Not only that, but if you look in the very next verse here, it says this: religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit the orphans and the widows in their affliction. We see right here that we are to go and visit, that we are to go to them. It says this very evidently for us, that religion that is pure. So now it's telling us this was the wrong type of religion, that now we're supposed to be showing compassion, that there's something that has to be shown from this, that there's a showing of compassion, that there's a showing of mercy here. And it says to visit the orphans, widows in their distress. Now, question number one, does this mean then that this is all that true religion consists of? The answer is no, okay? Just if we go visit Mountain States Children's Home, or if we visit the widows of the congregation, are we saying, okay, we're good now? The answer is no. Are those things we should be doing? The answer is yes. So how do we then begin to find the actual truth behind all of this right here? Well, it simply means this, that when you visit orphans and widows in their distress, you get nothing out of it. Because what could an orphan or a widow give to you? Especially in this context right here. Because in this day and age, a widow could not work. An orphan had no money. They had no means of themselves. There was nothing that they could give back to you. Which means whenever you go and you visit them, and that word visit there brings about a whole lot more than just to say, oh, I'll be praying for you, and you walk on by. Or it's more than just stopping by, knocking on the door, saying, everybody okay, and then leaving. That's so much more than that idea there. To visit them means to stay with them, to care for them, to look after them. That is the idea of visiting. The same idea whenever it talks about elders or to go and visit the members of the congregation there, it is talking about going and caring for them, not just stopping by and asking about the weather. So here again, now you visit the orphans and the widows in their distress. You're giving to them and you're getting nothing from them. What does that mean then? It means that you're not coming with ulterior motives. Because sometimes it's easy to serve God whenever I get some sort of recognition for it. It's easy to serve God whenever I get some sort of earthly glory from it. It is so much easier whenever I think I'm going to get a pat on the back, a high five, or whatever it is. It's easier to do those things. Because I get something in return from it right here and right now that appeases pride. But when you visit orphans and widows, you have none of that. It is simply between you and them and God. But isn't that how it should always be? Anytime we do anything for the Lord, it is truly between you and who you do the good work for and God. No one else. No one else needs to be involved. The Apostle Paul would teach about this idea in part there in Philippians chapter 2, to where he says there that there's some who, or Philippians chapter 1, he says that there are some who preach in pretense, and then there are some who preach in truth. Meaning that there's some who preach and do the ministry of God with ulterior motives behind them. That they have an agenda. But then there are some who do it just out of the genuineness of their hearts for God. This is how we have to be. Church, this is how you need to be. Whenever you're asking yourself, well, what can I do for God? What can I do for God this week? The answer is a whole lot. The question is, are you willing to do that for God and not have anybody see you do it though? Because that truly is what we need more of. I don't need to know everything that you're doing. That is between you, the person who you're doing it for, and God. That's what we need more of. We don't need to be seeking glory for ourselves. That's not pure religion. No, remember that idea. The pure and undefiled, pure religion means that it is completely white. That it has no stains upon it. Meaning the stains that come from the world. Because again, why does the world do any sort of good or benevolence or any of those things? Oh, to get a tax write-off, to be able to be seen by others, maybe to get a plaque and so on and so forth, to be able to virtue signal to say, oh, look at how good I am. That is not pure religion. No, brothers and sisters, the way that we're truly going to be the church of Christ is by doing things with no ulterior motives. by doing things for each other out of the genuineness of our hearts and the genuineness of the Scriptures. And we need a lot more of that. We don't need to just be looking for position and power and prominence within the church. All of that is for Christ. None of that is for us. So give it all to Christ. Give Him all the glory and honor and recognition for the things that we do, because it is only because of Him we get to do these things. That is pure religion, undefiled there. Means that that which was pure at one point does not become defiled. That it has to remain pure time and time again. Because sometimes it's easy to be humble the first time and the second time. But as time goes on, we begin to think, well, why am I getting any recognition for this? Why am I not being recognized for X, Y, and Z? No, it has to remain undefiled as well. And we have to be visiting, genuinely caring for those that need it. Not just the orphans and widows, definitely them, but also for those who genuinely need help in the church. Go visit them. Please do not merely rely upon the elders or the deacon or the preacher to do this. No, I want you to work me out of a job to where y'all are visiting so much, y'all are caring for each other so much, there's nothing left for me to do except for sit in my study and read. That's what y'all need to do. Because that is what God has called us to. That is a religion that God recognizes. But then not only that, not only do we see that we are to be taking care of the orphans and the widows in their affliction, but also, lastly, we see that we are to keep oneself unstained from the world. That we are to be staying pure. That we have to stay pure in the eyes of God. That we are to remain holy throughout all of this process right here. That we are to keep our hands and our hearts clean all the time. It is not merely about showing up on Sunday morning with our Sunday best on. Meaning that we put on the best face, we put on the best dress, we put on the best vocabulary, and then we're good to go for Sunday. No, that is to be our everyday. There's no such thing really as a Sunday best. That is just a Christian's face. That is how it has to be. All the time. So then it is to remain pure and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Because of what we would read there in 1 John chapter 5, that the world is under the control or the dominion of the evil one. So then if we don't keep ourselves unstained by the world, who is staining us? It is that of Satan. It is that of the deceiver. And he stains us, and then we no longer have pure white robes. We no longer have that which is acceptable in the eyes of God. We have to keep ourselves pure. And again, this flies in the face of some who merely preach the idea of religion, meaning that I just adhere by a certain set of standards and I show up and I check the boxes and all these things. That is not religion that God recognizes. No, religion that God recognizes is, yes, you're showing up and you're doing all those things, but you're also having your heart that is pure and undefiled and unstained from the world. One last thing I want you to notice here in the text there of what it says, because this is important. It says to keep oneself unstained by the world. Really notice that. Whose responsibility is it to stay pure? Whose responsibility is it to remain white and undefiled within your spiritual robes? It is yours. It is mine. The elders cannot do this for you. They cannot keep you unstained from the world. They can do their best to set up parameters. They can do their best to be able to give you wisdom and to be able to give you commandments of when you should attend and what you should be doing and to be able to do all those things for you. But at the end of the day, who is responsible for your soul? It is yourself. That is a religion that God recognizes. That whenever we understand that I'm to work out my own salvation with fear and with trembling, that it is up to me and to me alone to remain pure and undefiled and unstained by the world, despite what might be going on around me, despite what the church around me might be doing. I still have to keep myself unstained by the world. Despite what my friends or my family or my co-workers are doing around me, I have to be the one to keep myself unstained by the world. It is not enough to be able to say, well, the church here at East Alameda, about 70 to 80% kept themselves unstained by the world, so then the whole collective gets to go to heaven then. That's not how it works. You can't begin to look at your brothers and sisters and say, okay, they're good and they're good and they're good. I'm okay where I'm at then. Wrong. Only God is good. Only God is good. Only He is pure. And therefore we have to rely on Him and Him alone, not on our brothers and sisters. It is our own responsibility to do these things. So if you truly want to be able to worship God in spirit and in truth, if you want to be able to render to God acceptable worship, if you want to be able to have a relationship with God through religion that God recognizes, then as we see, we need to be a steward over our tongue, that we need to be showing mercy and compassion, and lastly, we need to be staying pure day in and day out, because that is a religion that God recognizes. If you are not a Christian here this evening, I pray that you would truly consider your own relationship with God and how you've been trying to get to God in religion, because I'll tell you one thing, there's only one way to God. And that one way to God is in Christ and in Him crucified. Jesus would say, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and that nobody comes to the Father except through me. John chapter 14 and in verse 6, in Acts chapter 4 and in verse 12, there's no other name under heaven by which men must be saved. There's only one way for us to be truly saved. There's only one way for us to get to God. There's only one way for us to have pure and undefiled religion, and that is by emulating and conforming ourselves to the Son of God. So if you are here this evening and you are not a child of God, and you wish to become a part of the family of God, there is but one avenue through which we can do that, and that is through the waters of baptism. For we must be born again, both of water and spirit, John chapter 3 and in verse 5. If you are a Christian here this evening, I pray that your religion is not worthless. I pray that you yourself would take a spiritual and accounting of your heart and your lives right here and right now, and dedicate yourself to having a religion that God recognizes, so that you might truly relish in the relationship with God. If you have any need here this evening, I pray that you would come now while we stand and we sing the invitation song.